Hi there, and welcome to our third video in the 355 Code Intro to JavaScript series. And today we will be talking about variables. Last time we talked about the alert, prompt, and console.log functions, and this week we're going to show how to store something in a variable and even make some calculations based on user input. So let's start off with what is a variable. So you can think of a variable kind of as just like a box that can be used to store other things. And the way we tell JavaScript that a certain thing is a variable is by using a keyword, which is either let, var, or const. And in order to simplify things, we're going to talk only about let and const because let is a rather new keyword. And we're actually mostly going to be using let, and today we're not really going to use const. So the difference between let and const is really just how the computer knows to store the variable, and there are different situations where you can use each one. I don't really want to get into too deeply now because they are quite similar. So we're going to use let for today. And the way that we declare or tell the computer that something is a variable is by writing let and then our variable name. So let's call our variable number. Okay, and number, and then we write equal, and then we tell the computer what to put in the variable in this box. So let's say we tell this the number 50. Okay, and if we write here console.log number, then we play code and we get 50. Okay, because it's basically telling the computer, show us what's inside this box number. And now we can use this to store the answer that we get from a prompt in a variable and then console it. So let's go back and do you remember how to prompt? So yes, it's prompt, not too hard to remember. And then the question that we want to ask. So let's say, how old are you? Okay, and now basically what we want to do is to tell the computer that we want to store this answer to this prompt in a variable. So let's say let age equal prompt, okay? And remember what this prompt is equal to is actually the answer that the user gives, right? Okay, so we have our variable, and now let's console.log age. And if we play the code, we get a prompt, 29, and console logs age. So now what I want you to try and do is to see if you can guess how to ask for two numbers and then add them together. Okay, this is a little bit of a jump because you know how to ask for a prompt and you know how to console. I'm not sure if you know how to add. You'll have to see if you can figure that out. So pause the video now and take a second to see if you can prompt the user twice for two numbers and then add them together in console.log. Okay, great. So we're back now, and I hope you gave that a try, and I hope you succeeded. Now I'm going to show you how to do it. So let's say let number 1 equal prompt. Okay, number 1. And then let number 2 equal prompt number 2. Hi there, and welcome to our first weekly 355 Code JavaScript challenge. This week we are using a challenge from a popular website, JS Challenge. And the mission is to create a function that takes an array of strings. For example, this array that I've written here on the bottom. So you can see it's an array called myArray, and it's made up of strings. Okay, so this shouldn't be numbers or Boolean or anything like that, just strings. And then it returns the longest string. So this function basically takes a look at this array, finds the longest string, and returns it. And you can use, let's say, console.log at the end to just log the function with, for example, myArray. Now it won't do anything because we haven't written the function yet, but and then in your console you should actually get the it should say the very ugly. Okay, that would be the answer in this case. So I recommend trying to solve this in two steps. So first, try solving it without any kind of JavaScript method. I'm sure if you take this challenge and you put it in Google, then you'll find many answers to the challenge, and some of them will be using a specific JavaScript method. And I challenge you to try to solve it without that, just to use very, very simple things that we may have learned in our courses, or that you really could solve with very basic JavaScript, and then only then try and find that specific JavaScript method that would give a more concise solution. So that's the challenge. And next week we will have the answer to the challenge. You can also check out our blog for a written description of the challenge. And I recommend subscribing to our channel if you want to follow up and get the answer next week. If you want to have a go at the challenge, you can stop the video now. And what I'm going to do is give a few hints for how to approach this challenge. So I'll be giving 3 hints, and I will stop in between each hint, so you can either stop now or you can stop after any specific hint and have a go by yourself. And please, you can leave your answers to the challenge in the comments below, or send it to us by message on Facebook or Instagram. Just please share your solutions. We're very curious to see how you solve the problem. So hint number 1 is to try and break down the function into comparing specific items in the array. So in order to find the longest string, we're going to need to be comparing. So for example, we're going to need to compare the good with the bad, and then we're going to need to compare the bad with the very ugly. And we're going to be needing to do comparisons like that inside the array. So try and have that in mind and come up with a way to break down the problem into basically just a bunch of comparisons between 2 items within the array. So that was hint number 1. If you're continuing now, you're going to be hearing hint number 2. So hint number 2, this is in order to solve step 1, so without a JavaScript method, and that is to use a loop, specifically a for loop, and basically take this array and loop through it and do the comparison that I mentioned. So that is hint number 2. And now for the last hint number 3. This is regarding solving with step 2, how to solve with the JavaScript method. So the JavaScript method that you need to use here is called .reduce. And basically what it does is it does that comparison that I mentioned in a way that's very specific to arrays, so it's not as generic as a for loop. And so the end code will be more concise.